So just so you all know, we do tend to record our classes. So, and I'll show you where you can get a copy of the various recordings of our classes so you can see what's going on. My name is John Meredith. I am your instructor. I am a Sumo employee, have been with Sumo a little less than 2 years. It'll be 2 years in January. If I sound a little gravelly, it's because I have a cold. So I apologize for that, but still we'll be able to get through this class without too much problems. As I mentioned to many of you as you guys signed in, I hail from New Hampshire. So that's where I live, up in the New England area. And as we commented before, I grew up in St. Louis. So for those of you in St. Louis, I remember the fun times I had there growing up. But like I said, that was a long time ago. Anyway, our focus today is going to be on Sumo metrics and talking about metric mastery. And the way this class is going to work out is we will talk a little bit about setting up a collector and then grabbing some metric data from your machines if you want. And again, maybe if you want to do that, that's great. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. I'll have some data here on my machine that you'll be able to play with. And then we'll talk about, collecting those metrics, analyzing those metrics. Then we're going to talk about some various applications and other things we can use with metrics. We're going to write a lot of metric queries. And just in short, we're going to have a lot of fun here in the next 2 hours. After that, you have a chance to take your 1-hour certification exam, and I will be here for that. So if you need any help, you got stumped on a question, I will warn you, for those of you who've taken our certification exams, like the fundamentals and the search mastery, those are fairly easy compared to this one. This is probably the hardest exam of our 10 exams that you'll take. So just want to set the expectation that there's a lot of stuff here, a lot of driving you through the documentation and things like that. So just want to make you aware. So that's our game plan. One thing, we are running a promotion right now. So if you do take the exam at the end of the class and you pass it, you are welcome to send a copy of your certificate to training-promotions@sumologic.com, and we will send you a $15 Uber Eats voucher. So who says there's no such thing as a free lunch? So there you have it. So you guys take your exam, pass it, we'll gladly send you an Uber Eats voucher. Again, all you do is send it to training-promotions@sumologic.com. And I have no doubt in my mind that when we get around to taking the certification exam, somebody's going to ask for this information, and I'll put it in the chat box. So, all right. So let's talk about metrics. What are metrics? Metrics are, and by the way, I'm going to stop my video streaming just to save some bandwidth here. Metrics are data points that measure value, and typically we measure value over time. So, for example, here, the measurement of temperature on an hourly basis, right? Your weight, I don't want to discuss it, once a week, the height of your child every 6 months, that's always a fun one, right? So again, we're looking at these metrics to see how we're doing. And metrics typically can be also referred to as KPIs, key performance indicators. So again, you want to sit there and see, maybe you're in a manufacturing environment and you want to see the pressure and the salinity and the speed of various motors and various other things. It's part of your manufacturing process. You might capture that metric data. Okay. We want to see if an outage has occurred and restore service, lots of different things that will help you if you look at the various metrics that you might have. So again, metrics are nothing more than data points that measure over time. Now, there's a little exercise here where we talk about what's a metric versus what's a log, right? A log is a record of events that have occurred. For example, if a user logs in, that's going to be a log entry, right? If I want to see the count of how many times the user's logged in within an hour, that might be a metric. So we can go through here and we can look at the wind patterns over the last 24 hours. Wind patterns might be a little hard to justify as far as a metric. It might be more of a log event because it's going to talk about direction as well as speed. If, however, I want to see speed, then that might be a metric. Something that I typically can aggregate, something that I can sum, min, max, that sort of thing is a metric. Every time the wind exceeds 20 knots, again, that's going to be a simple Boolean, yes or no, it exceeded, it didn't exceed it. CPU uptime for the last 15 minutes, again, probably not a metric, probably a, CPU uptime for the last metric. Yeah, that's probably a metric, but more importantly, what is my CPU? What are my CPU percentage and things like that? A failed login would obviously be in a log. Excuse me. And a number of server errors over an hourly basis, that would also be a metric. So again, when we look at metrics, we typically look at time. Don't have to, but we typically do. Now, for those of you who have had, and by the way, just do me a favor, if you would, raise your hand, your virtual hand there in the chat box, if you have taken other Sumo classes, training classes before. And let me, so if you've taken other Sumo classes before, you've probably seen this, this diagram. So the way things work inside of Sumo is that the first order of business is we've got to get data into Sumo. So we're going to sit there and bring in some data to Sumo. And obviously we don't bring, in our case, we want to bring metric data, but we're going to basically set up metric data and bring metric data in. Then we're going to use a bunch of metric queries. That's different than log queries. The operators are a little different and things like that. But we can then build visualizations, build charts, things like that. We can then take those charts and those queries and we can pump them out to dashboards. And then we can also create alerts. So this is going to be the focus of our class today. We're going to go through this process over the next 2 hours, the next hour and 50 minutes to go through that process. So first order of business is we've got to collect the metric data that we want. You'll find that there's two major categories of collectors. There's hosted collectors. So if you're on the cloud, AWS, Azure, if you're on various software as a service type things, those collectors already exist. All we need is the URL to your environment and then an account that has access to the metrics that we need. So there's nothing you have to install. There's nothing you have to do. The other type of collectors we have are installed collectors. And these are little lightweight Java-based applications that you can download from Sumo Logic and you can install. In a little while, we'll have an opportunity to install a collector. And all these collectors do is they compress the data, they encrypt the data, and they send the data to Sumo Logic. Now, as far as these installed collectors, there's two configurations, if you will. You can install a collector on each machine that you want to grab metrics and other log data from, and then have that collector then encrypt, compress, and send to the Sumo Logic Cloud. Or you can also install a consolidated installed collector and then have these machines forward their logs to this consolidated collector. This will then encrypt, compress, and send to the Sumo Logic Cloud. So it's the same collector, it's just how you use it. Do you consolidate all of your logs coming in? And again, if you start getting over like 500 logs and stuff like that, better to have more than one consolidated installed collector, okay? There are some metrics, there are some values where you want to switch from more of a consolidated installed collector to a local data collection process. Here, like I said, we have a little diagram here of talking about our hosted collectors and the various systems that we use where we can, again, there's nothing you have to install. These are maintained by Sumo Logic. And then over here on the left, we have the installed collectors. And again, you can install a collector on each machine, or you can install a collector on one machine and have the other machines forward their logs. Pretty simple stuff. Okay. Now, this particular slide makes a great test question or two. So I'm going to help you out here a little bit, point out this. By the way, a little later on, I'm going to show you where our slides are, where our recording of this class is, and things along those lines. So first of all, when we ingest metrics, if the metric timestamp is more than 1 week old, we don't ingest it. We let it go through. So we only ingest metrics that are less than a week old, right? And then when we receive the metric, right, we receive the metric in its raw, and we will at 1 minute and 1 hour intervals, we will aggregate it. We will minute, we will max it, we will average it, we will sum it, and we will count it. Now the raw data we store for 7 days. And then at the 1 minute intervals that we do, where we do the min, the max, the average, the sum, the count, we store that for 30 days. And then when we do the 1 hour increments, where we do it every hourly, we restore that for 13 months. So you can, within a year, go back to an hourly interval, or within 30 days, go back to a minute, or within 7 days, you can go back to whatever the data collection specificity is. So, and we'll talk about that when we set up our collector. Any questions? All right, let me make sure everybody's got their mics enabled here. Again, for those of you who just joined us, welcome. So again, talking a little about metrics. When we deal with metrics in Sumo Logic, we use the key value for pair format. So, for example, I might have a key called metric. What is my metric? What am I looking at? Wind speed? Am I looking at heartbeats? Am I looking at CPU uptime, CPU utilization? What am I looking at? And then again, we have another key value pair for maybe region and country and things along those lines. So when we build our metric query, we might do something like metric equals wind speed, and then region equals EU for Europe, and then country equals Spain. And this would then show me all the stations I have across Spain. And if we have 255 stations, we'll see the data for 255 stations. If I only want to see the ones from Valencia, the city of Valencia inside the country of Spain, then again, I could add that key value pair. And then if I want to see the average of those three stations, I want to see a single value, I could add an operator in here, average, min, max, whatever. And we'll show you where those operators and stuff are in just a minute. In fact, we're going to come up to it just a minute. So here, analyzing metrics, and again, we've got a series of operators. These operators are different than our log operators. So I want you to be aware that they are a little different. I can click on this. It will take me into our Sumo Logic documentation. And by the way, let me go ahead and put this in the chat box so you guys can have it. But here is the metric operators. And again, we have a chapter in here in our documentation for metrics. Now, let me back up here for a second, or let me open up a new tab. To get to our documentation, it's simply help.sumologic.com. And if you go to help.sumologic.com, you'll see we have a series of chapters. One of those chapters is metrics. And so here in our metric chapter is everything you're going to want to know about metrics. And as I mentioned earlier, in the certification exam is a bit tougher. So there's going to be a lot of questions in here that are going to drive you through the documentation here a little bit. So just want you to be aware of it. Now, you can, if you want to, search for something like metric operator. Save yourself some time rather than going through the individual chapters. And again, this takes you to that metric operator link that I just put up in the chat box. So here are the various operators that we're playing with. And these are some of the operators we're going to use in the next hour and 45 minutes. And also there is a cheat sheet here that you can click on, cheat sheet PDF, and you can print this out and put it next to your computer so that you can see the various metric operators that you might want to play with. Okay. So, and this is different than our log operators. So any questions so far? All right, let me get back to my slides. Time for us to go ahead and log into Sumo Logic. Now, what I'd like you to do is fire up Google Chrome or Firefox, either of those browsers, and I'd like you to go to service.sumologic.com. This time for this class, you're going to actually log in with administrative privileges. So the next thing I want you to do is pick a 3-digit number. Any 3-digit number that you want, I'd like you to put it in the chat box. For those of you who have always had a fascination with James Bond, you can now be 007. You can pick any 3-digit number you want. Is there a question? Oops, sorry. Let me stop my slides here for just a quick second. And let me go out here and let me copy this information and put it in the chat box. So what I want you to do is log in as training plus admin, 3-digit number at sumologic.com. So again, I'm going to fire up a new tab, service.sumologic.com. It's going to log me in. I'm going to log myself right out. Okay. And I'm going to log in with a training admin account. Okay. So looks like I've got 613 here, which is okay, except to tell you the truth, I'm going to grab 603. And you may ask yourself, why is John grabbing 603? It's real simple. That's the area code of New Hampshire. Now, as luck would have it, our password just changed. It changed yesterday. So this password is going to be good for the month of December. And the password is holiday 21 exclamation mark. And that's with a capital H. Holiday 21 exclamation mark. And then you click sign in, and it should just allow you to log in. So here you are logging into Sumo Logic. And I'd like to make sure you all get a chance to log in there. So somebody asked the question earlier, is this going to be a hands-on class? You betcha. So if you would log in. Now, when you get a chance, I'd like you to raise your hand and let me know that you're logged in, or more importantly, if you're having problems logging in, let me know that too. I want to get everybody logged in. So anybody who wants to play can play. Anybody who doesn't want to play, that's fine too. I realize you got day jobs and other things that are attracting your attention. Again, if you're having any problems logging in, please let me know. All right, let me go ahead and lower the hands. And actually what I'm going to do, if you don't mind, is I'm going to log out of this trading admin account. So if somebody wants it, they can have it. I'm going to log in with my account. And the reason is I have administrative rights, more administrative rights than you do. And so therefore I can show you some of the things. Okay. Now, while we're here, I want to point out a couple of things for you. Okay. Matt asked a question here. And then Vanish has got a question here too. Let's take Matt's first. Did this password change throughout your training environment? This password changes once a month, Matt. So every month we change it, and we change it on the first Monday of the month. And if you realize, if you look at the calendar, that was yesterday. So we changed it yesterday, Matt. And that's when we change it. So this password does change throughout the training environment. So hopefully that answers your question, sir. And then Avanish says he goes to service.sumologic.com. He's seeing a blank page. You don't necessarily need to put the UI in there, just service.sumologic.com. You shouldn't see a blank page. Service.sumologic.com. Okay, resolved. Okay, good, excellent. All right, excellent. Matt asked, where do we go to find the new password when it changes? That's a great question, Matt. And let me answer your question this way, okay? Where you can go at any time to find the new password is, and you're logged into Sumo, whether you're logged into your company's account or you're logged into our account, the training account, doesn't make a difference. If you go here to the house tab, where the house tab is, and if you click on certification and you click on get certified, this takes you to our LMS, our learning management system. And here, Matt, is where you can see the passwords. So here's the passwords for these courses. Here's the password for these courses. And also, if you act now, here is my contact information. I'll put it in the chat box. So you can reach out to me, or any of you can reach out to me, and I will gladly provide you that information. Okay. So there you go. There's my contact information. And Alex will gladly provide that to you. Not a big deal, not a secret. Okay. All right. Now, while we're here, I also want to take advantage and show you a couple things. So again, we're logged into Sumo. And over here is our navigation panel. Now, the navigation panel on my machine is closed. I'm going to open it up. All I have to do to open it up is click where it says Sumo Logic, or click on the hamburger menu, and voila, it is now opened up. Most of you have had other classes before. You know, this is our library, our shared library, where you and I can access applications and various things that people have installed, various dashboards and queries and things. Here's your personal directory, where you can save things to your personal directory if you'd like. And again, you can access this. You can also share these things in your personal directory with others. Here's your favorites. And of course, here's your recents, recently opened by you or recently shared with you. Now, down below is our main menu. And here in our main menu, if we click on help, and I would like you to go ahead and click on help, I want to point out a couple things for you. So under help, if you click on community, this takes you to our community. And this is our community that our customers and you and Sumo and our partners and everybody collaborate on. So if you're looking for code examples, if you're looking for how do I type things, this is a good place to search. Now, the reason I took you here, though, is I want you to search for the word slides. S-L-I-D-E-S, slides, S-L-I-D-E-S. And when you do that, you'll see two links. This first link, training and certification labs, webinars, and slides. This is the one that we want. If you click on this, here you can see all of our courses, and you have a link to our labs, you have a link to a recording of this class, and you have a link to our slides. So if I scroll down and I look for metric mastery, there it is. Here's a link to our labs. Here's a link to a recording of this class, and here's a link to our slides. Now you might ask yourself, why are we providing the slides? Remember that your certification exam is open note, open book, open documentation, open slides. So you can go out here and you can see our slides and you can skip through them if you want, because a lot of questions are based on it. In fact, I believe I mentioned that, give me a second here. This retention policy is part of the question, right? You can also download these slides if you want to through your LinkedIn account. And if you get this funny little panel pop up, just put your cursor away from it and click and it'll go away. It's annoying, but it is what it is. Okay. So how did I get to the slides? Remember, I went to community. I went to, in Sumo Logic here, I clicked on community, under help, community, and then I searched for slides. However, I'm going to make it easier for you. Okay. Just bear with me a second. I'm going to make it a little easier for you. Let me pin this down. I'm going to take this training and URL right here, and I'm going to copy that URL, and I'm going to paste it. So thank you, Matt. So there is the link to this information. So for example, like I said, tomorrow, just so you know, at the same time, we are teaching some of our observability classes. So bear with me a moment while I look up here real quick and find our observability classes. There we go. We're going to teach the observability fundamentals class tomorrow, same time. And the observability administration class, we'll teach that on Thursday. I'll be teaching both of these in the morning. And then Josh will be teaching. We have afternoon sessions as well, maybe evening sessions, depending on where you are. And so, again, you're welcome to access this information, these recordings, these slides, these labs. Speaking of these labs, I would like us to all go here in Metric Mastery Certification. And I'd like us all to click on the labs so that we have access to those labs. And here are the 11 labs that we're going to do. We're going to start by installing a collector and setting up a metric host, and then playing around with metric queries and doing all kinds of neat things. And when we're done, we're going to clean up. We're going to delete our collector and do a little housekeeping. Now, if you open up this labs, and by the way, I'm going to copy this again, this URL, and I'm going to put it in the chat box to make it easy for you. There you go. But I would like you, I recommend if you're running Google Chrome, you may want to pin this. So you can right click on your tab, you can choose to pin it. That way it's kind of out of the way. So you can switch back and forth between our Sumo Logic and training environment, and of course, this environment as well, these labs. All right, so far so good. Okay, good. Let me just check and make sure everybody's got their microphones enabled. In case you got a question, you can ask. By the way, you can also chat box. Is there a question? Okay. So now what we want to do is we want to start going through the labs. We want to start talking about installing a collector. So if I click on lab 1, here in lab 1, we need to download a collector package. So here inside, and again, if you don't want to install or you cannot install software on your computer, it's okay. I'm going to install this on my computer, and you can obviously work with my team. Is there a question? Okay. So here I'm going to click on my Sumo Logic environment, and to set up my collector, I'm going to go to my main menu where it says Manage Data over here on the left in my navigation pane, and underneath that it says Collection. And for those of you who have seen Sumo Logic before, you know these are our collectors. These things with the triangles are our collectors. Okay. And I'm also just going to go in here, if you don't mind, I'm going to do a quick search for my initials. Good. Make sure there's nothing there. Excellent. And over here, it says here, I can upgrade my collectors. So if there's newer collectors and I want to upgrade them, I can. I can add collectors. I'll talk about access keys and tokens in just a little bit, but we want to click add collector. And when we add collector, it's going to ask us, basically, we're going to add it. We want to make sure that we check to make sure that our collector doesn't already exist. I'm sure your collector's not there. I know my collector's not there. So I click add or click continue here. And I've got a choice. I can either install a collector or I can do a hosted collector. I'm going to do an installed collector, and that's what I need to do for my computer. But I'm going to show you the hosted collector just as well. Okay. Do I need any VM or ESCS or anything on my local host? No. EC2? No, you don't need anything. Nope. You're just going to use your computer and get metrics off of your host machine. So there's nothing you don't need to spin up. You don't need to spin up an AWS environment or anything like that. We'll keep it simple. Okay. Okay. Somebody asked if we installed the previous collector, do we need to do it again? No, you do not, Tommy. You can keep your collector. That's fine. We will install a source in lab 2 that you will need to do, but you've got a collector, you're good to go. All right. So as I mentioned, if I was on a hosted collector, if I click on hosted collector here, you'll see all I'm going to do is fill out some information here that allows me to define a collector. And then from that hosted collector, bear with me a moment, from my hosted collector, bear with me a second. So here in my hosted collector, I could then add my source. And when I'm dealing with a hosted collector, here's some of the sources and stuff that you can add. So anything to do with AWS or Azure or things along those lines, you can install these sources. Now, again, we'll get into sources here in lab 2, but that's as far as installing a hosted collector. Now, what I want to do and what I want us to do is I want us to install a installed collector. So again, I'm going to go back here to manage data. I'm going to go back here to collector. And over here, I'm going to add collector. This time, I'm going to choose installed collector. And these installed collectors, as I said, are little lightweight Java-based applications. How lightweight, you ask? Fair question. They will typically take up less than 1% of your CPU and less than 1% of your memory. So not heavy at all. All they do is compress, encrypt, and send. Okay. Okay. How do I install a collector? Is this from Metric Explorer? Nope. You install the collector from your, again, your main menu in the manage data, under manage data in the main menu here, under collector. And then over here on the far right where it says add collector. That's how you install this collector. So you're going to first download a collector. You're going to go to installed collector here. And then you're going to pick your operating system, right? If you're running Windows, I assume those of you running Windows, you're running the 64-bit Windows. But maybe you're running Linux, maybe you're running a Mac, maybe you're running Unix. You can do a binary package. Bottom line is that you're going to install or download first the collector. Now, I happen to be on a Mac, so I'm going to go ahead and use the Mac option, and I'm going to go ahead and download this collector software. Okay. And by the way, here in lab 1, it proceeds to give us directions on how to do this, right? Go to installed collector, grab your collector. Now I'm going to start installing my collector. So I'm going to open up my download here. And so my download has opened up. I've opened it up, and I am going to go ahead and install this. Now, a couple things, right? It says the Sumo Logic Collector Installer app was downloaded from the internet. Are you sure you want to open it? Yes, I am. Security thing. Good old Apple. How thoughtful. Trying to protect me. So I start going through the installation wizard. And when we get to where there's questions and things, I'll stop and I'll explain all that fun stuff. So right now, I told it to start the installation. It should ask me for my password so it can install this. There it is. There's my password. And we, At Sumo Logic, take passwords very seriously, as you can see. All right. So that's my password. So this brings up my collector setup wizard. And here, I'm going to click next. I'm going to accept the service agreement. Next. Now, I've already got a collector installed on here, so it's going to uninstall my previous version. And I'm also going to warn you, this thing's going to install and it's probably going to throw an error. It always does the first time. I don't know why, but it does. So it's uninstalling my old version. It's installing my new version. And it looks like I'm not going to throw an error. Son of a gun. Good deal. Excellent. All right. Yep. So access keys. Yep, we're going to get there, Ivish. So bear with me a second. We're going to get into that right now. Actually, before I get there. So when I get here and I've installed my collector, there's some advanced settings. Not that you need to worry about these advanced settings, but I'm going to show you anyway. So under my advanced settings, if I click on that, I can see here's my host name. It took my collector name as my host name. I can specify a different host name if I want. I can specify a category, some field that I want to maybe, what department am I in or something along those lines. A description if I want, my time zone, whatever time zone I want to use, my CPU target percentage. So how much of my CPU do I want to use for this? Okay, it doesn't take up much, but again, you can throttle it. There's some other settings and stuff in here. As far as my URL, do I want it to go to the default URL that is Sumo Logic? Okay, or do I want to send it to another URL? If you're using APIs and other things, maybe you want to send it to another URL. Do you have a proxy server? And if you do have a proxy server, you need to go through that proxy server. Sources. You can add your sources later, which is what I'm going to do manually, or you can create your sources in a JSON file and have them automatically installed when your collector is installed. And then the other thing is, who do I want to run this as? Do I want to run this as a specific user? Do I want to run this as either root or administrator? Those of you on Windows machines, administrator. Those of you on non-Windows machines, it's root. So I'm going to take all these defaults. I'm going to click next. Now, when I click next, it's now asking something about token here and access key. If I go back to my directions, you'll see that as I go through this and I get into here's my access key, we've got to generate an access key. And I'm going to talk about the difference between an access key and tokens here in just a second. So back to my Sumo Logic environment here for a moment. Here in my Sumo Logic environment, you'll see I've got a link for access keys and I've got a link for tokens. Tokens are used if you want to do an unattended installation and you want to do a one-time type installation. So you can, I can, we can click on this tokens and we can generate a token. It's a one-time type usage thing that you can use so that when you do an unattended installation, it'll automatically install it. Okay, that's what a token is. Installation token. By the way, this is under my security tab. So it's actually under administration, under security. That's where my tokens are. My access keys are here. And I can add an access key if I want to. Now, again, from a system administrator perspective, I can see all the access keys that are generated. An access key allows me to use this over and over and over again. And in our case, we're going to use an access key. Now, I can access my access keys here, or as you may recall, I can go into manage data collection. And when I click on access keys up here, what it's going to do is it's going to take me actually into my preferences. So here, wherever your account is, this training account that you're in, you can go into preferences. And here's where you can see what access keys that you have. You don't need these access keys anymore. Like I don't need this one. I'm going to delete it. Okay, I can delete it. Now, when you generate an access key, it's going to have an access ID and it's going to have an access key. Once you see the access key and you click OK, you'll never see that access key again. So if your company has policies that require you, when you create session keys and things like that, to document them and put them someplace, then you need to do that. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and click add. And then I'm going to give this thing a name. And I guess per our directions, per our directions, we're going to add an access key here. So again, I'm in lab 1, about 2/3 of the way down, right? They want me to call this client with your initials _ access key. Okay, that's fine. Call it anything you want. Put my initials in here, and then I'm going to call AK for access key, just so I know what it is. If I need to allow list my domain so that I can access this, I can specify that. I don't need to do this. You don't probably need to do this, so I wouldn't worry about that. Hang on a second. Let's check the message here. Okay. Shabe asked a question: does Sumo offer any automation or PowerShell scripts for domain level deployment? We do have some APIs that you can use. I have not tried to do it with a Microsoft installer package or something like that. But if we go to help.sumologic.com, just to answer your question here a little bit more, and if I go into our APIs, okay, here in our API, your collector management API, that's where you can deploy your collectors programmatically. And so again, you can use this, but I've not tried it on a Windows environment through a domain type deployment. I have created scripts to run this manually. I just haven't tried to do it with an MSI file. So hopefully that answers your question. So back to my access key. Again, I've given it a name. I'm not going to worry about this allow list. I click generate create key. Here is my access ID, and here is my access key. Now, let's go back to our installation. Here in our installation, we're going to select access key. We're going to click next, and we'll see that we've got a field to copy and paste our access ID and our access key in. I mentioned that the job of the collector was to encrypt. Well, in order to encrypt and decrypt properly, we need to have a common key. And so that's what this access key or token does. So I'm going to click the copy button on this access ID. I'm going to go ahead and do a paste. I'm going to go over here. I copy my access key. I'm going to do a paste. Okay. Then I click next. And it's going to try to connect to Sumo Logic, and it's going to try to ensure that key works. And if I get no errors, we are in good shape. Our collector is now installed. I click finish. Down over here, if I click done, you'll see that it added my collector, my key here. If I try to edit this key, I will see the access ID, but I will not see the access key. So this access key is a one-time type thing. Once you see it, that's it. You won't see it again. So now if I go into my Sumo Logic environment, under manage data, under my collection, and I search for my initials, hang on a second. Should be case sensitive. It is. Let's try this client here. Oh, I know what happened. Hang on. We use my host name, Jay Meredith. There we go. So there is my client, Jay Meredith Mac. So it's installed my collector. So my collector is installed, and you want to search for it based on your host name. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes lab number 1. Any questions or problems? Does this work on hardware beyond PCs? Yes, as long as you're supporting the various operating systems. Remember, we have flavors for Linux, Unix, Mac, and Windows. So, and the binary is for anything Unix and alike. So hopefully that answers your question. So these could be servers that we're installing on. Probably would be. Again, if you're on a cloud environment, AWS, Azure, something like that, you don't need to install these collectors. They already exist. Moving on to lab 2. Now that we've got our collector installed, let's create a source. So here in lab number 2, we're going to find our collector. And underneath here, there's an add option. We're going to click add, and we're going to add source. And here under add source, I can add a local file or a remote file if I want to. I can add my syslog, my scripts, my streaming metrics, my host metrics, all kinds of stuff. And for those of you on Windows, you can add your Windows event logs and things like that. What we want to choose here is host metrics. So we're going to choose host metrics. That's what we want to bring in. And it wants us to give this thing a name. So if I go back to my directions, they want us to put in host metrics and underscore your initials. Okay. Description we can put in if we want. Source host, we can define our source host. I don't need to. But source category is something, yes, we recommend that you do. So a source category is a metadata tag that we can search by and use. In our case here for our source category, they want us to use the phrase host metrics / your initials. So I'm going to put in my host metrics / my initials. Now, one other thing when you're doing a source of any type, you can add key value pairs here if you want to. So I could maybe put in like a field name like department, and then since I'm a trainer, I could specify training or education as my value. I could say something like field name business unit, BU, and then the name of my BU. I could put in any key value pairs if I want to, because I can search by those key value pairs. Now, I don't need to do this. I'm just pointing what this stuff does, what's happening here. So I'm not going to add a metadata tag, but you could if you wanted to, and you could search by that. Under my scan interval, how often do I want to send metrics up to Sumo Logic? And in my case, I'm going to choose 10 seconds. You can go with the default or you can change it to whatever you want. I don't really care. And then here, what metrics do I want to bring? And I can expand the CPU, for example, and I can look at these various information dots and they tell me what these values are. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check everything. So I'm going to grab my TCP stack, my network, my disk drive activity. I'm going to bring in all of my metrics, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and click save. And now I have added my source. And I have basically done part of lab 2. So here in lab 2, we added a source. Here in a minute, I'm going to go looking and making sure I've got data from my source. So back here in my collector, where it says source category, there's a little blue icon to the right of the source category. If you click on that, it's going to open up in the metrics tool, and I should start to see some information coming in. And if I want to here, I can easily refresh this, rerun this to see more metric data. So now I'm starting to get metric data in here, and life is good. So I can start seeing some of my metric data. Any questions so far? Okay. How do you see the metrics from the host? Yep. And again, I'm assuming your question is, how do I see the metrics in Sumo Logic? So if I go to where my collector is and where my source is, where my source category is here, right here, if I click on this, this will then show me my metric data. Should start showing me some data coming in here. Now, as far as seeing those metrics and those values from your host, I don't know what monitoring tools you use, perfmon or whatever. You can actually see the same data on your computer if you want to. But this is how we see it in Sumo. Okay. All right. Any other questions before we consider taking a break? All right, ladies and gentlemen, I propose we take a 10-minute break. We turn my 10-minute timer on. When this timer gets down to 0, I'd like you all to be back here. So let's take a 10-minute break, and I'll see you back here in just a little bit. See you back here in about 9 minutes and 52 seconds. Have a good break. Hey, folks, this is John. Is there a question? Hey, folks, welcome back. So here we are again. Just came back from a 10-minute break. Now I have some data here to play with, and we're going to actually write some metric queries to see what's going on. So hopefully you all had a nice break. You got a chance to get some more coffee, tea, juice, water, whatever. Somebody put something in the chat box. So Matt asked a question. Can we take a quick look at what you have configured for your source? Sure. So Matt, what I did was, again, under question. Is there a question? Under here, I added my source. And if I look in here under edit, you'll see here is where my source is. I've checked everything. I've changed my scan interval to the smallest amount, which is 10 seconds. And I specified my source category. Again, this was all the directions from lab number 2. And then, like I said, I can see, oops, okay. Looks like somebody added their host metrics to my host collector. That's fine. Not a big deal. But now I can sit there and see this information. So, yep. All right. So now what we want to do here is in lab 3, we want to play around. We want to take it for a test spin. So in lab 3, we are going to create a query to visualize some of these metrics. Now, let me fire up good old lab 3 and let's go ahead and go to town here. Okay. Can we add multiple hosts in a grid? I'm not sure I understand your question, but I think I do. So let me answer it this way. Keep in mind, queries are separate than collectors. So typically, this collector is going to reflect a host. Okay. So this is going to be a host. And then again, here I can see my different sources underneath that host. Now, that's the design. That's the intent. As you can see, somebody added their source to my host. So it's not, it doesn't have to be that way, but it's designed to be that way. It's recommended to be that way. Now, when I run a query, for example, here I go to new and I go to metrics. Here's where I can write a metric query. Now, one very important thing. This is where we're getting to lab 3. Let me close up my navigation panel to give me more screen space. Over here in my query, I can either run this in basic mode or advanced mode. So by default here, it's the last mode that you were in. So let me go back here. On my ellipses, my little more action button here in my query, I can switch this back to basic mode. Now, customers gave us feedback many years ago that said, Sumo Logic, you got a great product, but quite frankly, your metric interface is just too complicated. And so we said, okay, our developers went back to the drawing board and we made it simpler. So we have basic metric mode. We have basic mode now. So here in my basic mode, I can look for a specific metric. And if I type in CPU, you'll see here, I can see CPU in a lot of different states. I'm going to grab CPU load average. And then if I want to, I'm just going to go ahead and run this for the last 15 minutes. And what I'm looking at here are all of my hosts, my CPU load average for all of my hosts. And I can go in here and see the specific collector and the specific system and stuff I'm looking at. Additionally, if I click on chart, it looks like I have here a spaghetti factory because I'm looking at all the different hosts and stuff that I have. Now, I can, if I want to, I can filter it, right? So earlier we talked about how we can use source category. And in my source category, I can look for my specific host, which is right there. Let me run that. And there's my CPU load average time. Or if I want to, I can also go back to here and I can throw in a wildcard. So now I'm going to grab in any host metric that starts out source category host metric /star. And so when I run this, I now see a couple of you. I now see this one up here, which I'm just trying to get my cursor on so I can, there we go. I can see whose this is. Okay. I can see which machine this is. And then I can go down here and see this particular machine and see whose host this is. So the point is that you can pick the metric that you want. You can pick the filter and filter it specifically for you want. And then we can also do some sort of operation. And so that's what we're going to focus on here in lab 3. So here in lab 3, like I said, we can look at our specific metrics, all of our metrics, and get that spaghetti factory. Then I can filter and look specifically for my host metric or your host metric. So let's take this for a spin. Let's play around here a little bit. So again, right now I want to change this to my host metric, my specific host metric. There we go. By the way, if you want to see all of your metrics, get rid of this specific metric, right? You can see all of your metrics. Oops, excuse me. Try that again. There we go. So I can see all my host metrics. So you can, I can, we can see all kinds of neat stuff. Now let me go back here to try to follow the exercise. So here I can see my CPU load average. That's great. That's wonderful. It's exciting. I know you're thrilled. By the way, I can see it if I want to here in my time series as a line, as an area, as a bar, as whatever you want it to be. Okay. Columns. I can also, if I want to, display a single value, which will be the latest single value, or I can also see it as a honeycomb. And in the case of that honeycomb, I can conditionally format it red, yellow, green based on utilization. So as you can see, we can very quickly, and that was another complaint people had, was to be able to create nice visualizations. And that, obviously this is a bit challenging. So this interface, it makes it much easier to create the nice visualizations that we want. Now, additionally, I can add another query in here. And again, this time I want to look at CPU load average, again, just like I was doing here, 15 minutes. This time I want to see all of my hosts. The only problem is under operator, I want to see the average of all of my hosts. So here, when I run this query, here is the average of all of my hosts. Here's me down here at the bottom, displaying a lot less information. And you'll find later on, I can actually see the difference between these two things. Okay. So somebody asked a question, can we embed these graphs in other applications? Okay. Good question. Okay. So if I look at these graphs down here in these tags over here, where I've got my charts and my axes and all these different settings, I also have the JSON. And this is the JSON that represents this graph. So that's one way. Another thing that we can do from these graphs is, hang on a second here, bear with me a moment. I forgot where the heck they put it. I can also, hang on a minute. We have the ability to export this out as an image. And we also are working on exporting that as PDF. So those are in the process of being done here too as well, just so you know. But there's no, other than taking the JSON, I don't know of an easy way to incorporate this in other visualizations. And it can incorporate other products. Now, you can, I can, we can take this visualization here and we can add it to a dashboard. And we can actually send it to a dashboard and build the dashboard inside of Sumo Logic. So maybe I want to look at GPU load average 15 minutes. And then I can create a new dashboard. I'll just start with my initials and I'll put in today's date. It just reminded me that today's date is my daughter's. I have twin daughters. Today is their birthday. They are 39 today. That makes you feel old like your kids, getting older. So you can add this to a dashboard. And again, we can kind of manipulate things around. And then from these new dashboards, I can add other visualizations, other metric traces here, and things like that. And here from this dashboard, we can export this out as JSON, as PDF, as PNG. So hopefully that answers your question. And that's what I was looking for earlier. Thank you, Lynn. So hopefully, like I said, that answers your question. Let me get kind of back on task here, if you don't mind. So what we have the ability to do here is look at the difference between things in basic mode. Now, in lab number 4, we'll find that we have the ability to install a host metric app. In our app catalog, we have a host metric and process app. So if I go in here to Sumo Logic, whether it's in our training environment, you go into your company's environment, makes no difference. If I go into the app catalog and I look at host, HOSTS, you'll see I've got a host metric app and a host metric and process app. You can install this host metric app and you can see your host metrics. I believe I have the host metric app. So here I can see an overview of my various systems. Now, probably no data is going to show up. Okay, there's some data. Interesting. Maybe what I should do here, hang on a second. Let me just go ahead and delete this app. And I'm going to go ahead and reinstall it. So again, here in lab 4, they want us to install the app. So I'm going to go out here to my app catalog, host metrics. I want to add to library. It's going to put it in my personal folder by default. And it wants me to specify my source category, which again is host metrics / my initials. Now, you can specify your initials, or you can put a star in there to see all of your host metrics. So you decide how you want data you want to bring in. And if I do this right, I should see my host metric app. And if I go to host metric overview, it should now start populating with my data. There we go. There's my CPU, various other aspects here of my data. I could go into my disk drive and I can see specifically how my disk drive is behaving. But these apps have these queries and stuff all built for you. Each one of these queries, if I look at it and open it up, what you'll find, it's an underlying metric query. Now, one thing you might notice when I opened up this particular query, the interface looks a little different than what we were seeing before. So let me explain that. Remember I told you we had an old metric interface that people didn't, they said it was too complicated and things like that. Well, you can, I can, we can switch to that old interface. So in your metric query, up here where the 3 dots are, you can switch back to what we call classic metrics. And this is our old interface. This is the thing that people said is too complicated to use. And if I want to, I can I can switch to the new metric interface. So I can switch back and forth if I want to. Now, the new metric interface, like I said, is much easier to build dashboards and visualizations and all that sort of thing. Makes it pretty simple. Okay. How do I find my host metric data source? Good question. So to find your host metric data source, if I go into collection, and if you search for your collector, probably your host name or whatever, then over here, if you look and open up, here's your source category. That's the source name that you gave it. Okay. So your source category is what you're looking for. Or again, you can edit this up and look for your source category there. So I hope that answers your question. And so again, that's part of lab 4. They want you to use in lab 4 your host name, which should be host metric / your initials if you follow the directions. And we can go from there. But this is why we're talking about the classic metric interface versus the new metric interface. And again, I think you'll like the new metric interface a lot. I know I do. Much simpler to use. That's the old one. This is the new one. Now, one other thing I can do here. Actually, I'll wait till we get into it in labs. I'll just wait. Bear with me a second, guys. In our visualizations, in our new metrics, like I said, you can go in here and you can adjust your display overrides and make this, maybe you want, instead of single axes, you want dual axes. You can do that. You can control your axes here. Do you want to display a left axis or right axis? That sort of thing. You can control your legend, the properties of your legend. And as I said, here's the raw JSON. A lot of folks like the raw JSON because they want to modify it, make their company colors and stuff like that. They can do that. They can modify the raw JSON here if they want to. And that takes care of lab 4 in a nutshell. Now, in lab 5, we're going to sit there and play around with some queries. So we're going to sit there and write some queries here, look at some traffic, look at some data, all of that fun stuff. So here, by the way, I've got a bunch of tabs open. And I'm going to I can close them all up in one fell swoop. I can click on any one tab, the 3 vertical dots here, the more action button. And I can say close all tabs just to make things easy on myself. So I'm going to close all tabs. Can we get stacked graphs for a cluster of hosts? Yes, you can. So what you're going to do is when you install the app or you build the query, you're going to sit and say, I want to see a bunch of, different, the different hosts and stuff that you want to see, probably some sort of a wildcard. And then you'll create, as part of your visualization, probably a stacked graph. So, and again, just like a bar chart or a line chart, except that you'll make it stacked by controlling your axes. Okay. So meanwhile, back at the ranch here for lab, I'm going to go into my metrics. Again, I'm still in basic mode. The metric I want to look at is net invites. So let me type in net. And hopefully the IntelliSense here kicks in. Net invites. And I'm not going to filter it. So here I'm looking at my net invites for all of my systems. You can see I've got lots and lots of stuff here. And I believe they want me to go ahead and grab the rate and the sum. So over here where it says operator, I'm going to click on rate. So I want to see the rate of change based on the sum. And so this makes it very easy to pick the operators and stuff that you want. And I'm not going to specify by collector or by whatever. I'm just going to let that go. And the bottom line is what I'm seeing here is here's my net invites. Now I'm going to add another query. And I want to look at my net out bytes the same way. And out bytes, again, based on my rate, my change, if you will, based on my sum. So now I can see I've got 2 different shades of blue here. And what I want to do is I want to look at the difference. Now, in order to look at the difference, notice this one query is represented by hashtag A. This one's represented by hashtag B. If I add a third query, and if I change this query itself to advanced mode, I can go in and write whatever kind of expression I want. So I can say hashtag B minus hashtag A. And now I'm getting a third visualization, third color, which represents hashtag B minus hashtag A. And then down here, if I want to, I can select the individual values that I want. Or I can also go up here and I can mute the different values that I want. So you can turn on or turn off in the query what you're showing them, or your users. When I publish this into a dashboard, my users can use this to control what they want to see. Okay. How did I add the second query? I added the second query by clicking on the plus sign. So I clicked on the plus sign to add the second query or the third query or the whatever query. Now, as I said, these first 2 queries are in basic mode where we have drop down key value pairs. This last one is where I can write a whole nice long expression. And you're going to see later on in the exercises that we can start doing some really sophisticated stuff in this advanced mode. In fact, there are some things that you can only do in advanced mode. Okay. So here again, it wants me to show me the results. It says we can hide the A and B rows. So we can hide those A and B rows by simply clicking on the A and B to mute them out. And therefore we only see the result here. And then we can publish this up. Okay. Minus B minus A. Did we select any to get a custom query option? Yes. We went over here and we chose to go to advanced mode. So we went to advanced mode here so we could type in the minus B or the hashtag B minus the hashtag A. So let me get rid of this. So let me go back to basic mode. So here's my basic mode where I see my drop downs. I switch to advanced mode, and in advanced mode, I can write in the expression I want, which means that again, I can type in hashtag A, hashtag B minus hashtag A, and I get those results. Okay. So then we have this conversation about what's basic query versus advanced query. As I said, in basic query, you're going to have key value pairs, making it very easy for you to select what you want. In advanced query, you can write a query or write a rather elaborate query and stuff that you want. And so in the next series of labs, we're going to see that, for example, if you want to use certain operators and stuff, you're going to have to be in advanced query mode. Now, whatever query mode you left it in, so for example, here I've got a basic, and then I switch to advanced. If I open up a new tab, a new metric tab, the last thing I was in was advanced, so therefore it's going to be in advanced mode. If I switch this to basic mode, then I open up a new tab, it'll be in basic mode. Whatever the last mode you left it in is the mode that it's going to open up in. Just to kind of help you out there a little bit. Okay. Can you send the JSON data to Atlas or S3? I assume your question is, can you send the data to be stored on S3 and things like that? Yes, you can. When you set up your sources and your collectors, you can forward that data. So a little off topic, but that's fine. So we save it for the admin class. Back to my collectors. Back to my sources. I can do some data forwarding. Hang on a second. Okay. Back in here in my collector and my sources. Hang on a second. Should be able to forward this to. Oh, I know why. I got to partition the data. If I partition the data, I can take that partition and forward it out to S3 or some other system if I want to. So good question. We can talk about that offline if you'd like. Okay. All right. So that pretty much takes care of lab 4 or lab 5. In lab 6, what we're going to do here is we're going to filter using some advanced query mode. So everything we're going to do from this point forward, we're going to be in an advanced query mode. And we're going to write some queries and we're going to play around with some queries and see how advanced mode works. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into Sumo Logic, new, metric, make sure I'm in advanced mode. And what's cool about advanced mode is I can take some of the code that's right here and I can copy and paste it. So I'm going to take this code right here, copy, paste. Now I've got to replace where my initials are right here with my initials, okay? Also, additionally, if I wanted to, you know, again, I'm looking at my content type, host metrics. So I can run that and I'm going to see all my host metrics from all my different systems. And then if I want to, I can specify a specific source category. Source category, and I can say star, I want to see all the host categories, or I want to see all the ones that have host metrics /star. And now I can see all the host metrics for the specific thing. Or again, maybe I want to see my initials, my own host metrics. So here are my own host metrics. And then again, I can add the next piece that I want, which is a specific metric. So I want to specify metric equals, and then my CPU sys or whatever the heck you want. And again, I can click on chart and I can now see it as a visualization. Yeah. Okay. Liam asked a question. Do white space characters impact the query in any way? Yes, they do. And I assume by white space characters, you're asking about spaces, right?
Right.
And so if you do have a space in there, you're gonna have to put things inside of double quotes. So you put it inside of double quotes if you've got a space in there. If not, you're fine. So.
Yeah, but no impact like white space
Oh.
characters around operators or anything like that.
Right. No problem there. No problem there. Yep. Additionally, here, if I want to, I can add another statement in here. And by the way, those of you familiar with our log product, right, you know that if I want to combine operators and to combine different multiple lines of things here, I can add a pipe, right? So I can say, you know what, I want to use a filter command, and I want to filter for, actually, hold on, so let me copy the code in here. There we go. Filter where it's greater than 0 and less than 10. Now, my values here are between 0 and 10, so it's not really a problem. I don't see a lot of result difference. But if I were to say make this less than 5, then anywhere where I'm less than 5, it'll filter out and get rid of my data. If I go to 6, I'm fine. If I go to 2 here, right now I'm fine. If I go to 2.2, it's going to say no stuff to display. So it should filter it out. There we go. Okay. So you can filter out things, filter out certain values, whatever it is that you want to here. And actually it might help if I actually type that in correctly. There we go. So you can create elaborate expressions here to filter, to see a percentage greater than, to aggregate, to do whatever it is you want to do. So here I'm looking at my metric, my CPU sys, and I want to filter where the average is greater than 95, right? So let me just copy that. Let me go in here, metrics, paste. Let me get rid of this for right now, this pipe stuff. So here I'm looking at all my CPU sys. Again, they've got various values. The values are all over the place. Now, if I add the pipe and I only want to see where the average is greater than 95%, it filters out the values that we see. And again, I can select those individual values to see, or I can, of course, deselect and see all the various values. So you can write some nice queries here. Can you push your top commands as logs in time series? I'm not sure what you mean by push, but we can use the top commands, like the top and bottom commands. I assume that's what you're asking. If you want to, we do have a top and bottom command we can use in metrics. So yes, you can. And by the way, you can also, if you want to, let me add a new query here. I think interesting the question. I can also change this and make a log. So I can make a combination query, a combination of logs and metrics. Now, one thing, when you're doing the logs in this new metric interface, when you're doing logs, you have to aggregate your results of your logs. You have to do some sort of a count by or some sort of an aggregation in order for this to work. But yes, we can have a combination of logs and metrics in the same query. I think that's what you're asking. All right. So that takes care of that. In lab number 7, they want us to play with AWS. And there's some good information here with regards to AWS. In fact, there's a link here in lab 7 that has documentation about CloudWatch metrics. So CloudWatch comes with its own set of metrics. And I will tell you there's a question or two from the test about these CloudWatch metrics, like how many metrics can it do by default or whatever. And you'll find the answers in this documentation. Okay. But this is AWS's documentation talking about CloudWatch metrics that you and I can see and run and get the information of. So here in Lab 7, they want to actually install the AWS Advanced Load or Automatic Load Balancer and be able to sit there and see the data of our AWS environment. Now, here they have double quotes. I don't need the double quotes. If I had a space in there, I would need the double quotes. So here I can take this code. I can go out here, click new, metric search, paste, paste. Okay, run this, and it should run just fine. Okay. I could also remove the double quotes. And again, it will run just fine. The only time I need double quotes is if there's a space in there. Okay, so here I can very easily see in my automatic load balancers here, my metric and my performance and stuff associated with this. And again, I could filter it. I could do, filter for that spike. So I only see that spike, various pieces of information here. Okay. And here, for example, I'm looking at my 500 count. So let's go back here. Metric equals HTTP 500 count 5XX. And if I run this, now I'm only looking for those specific metrics in here. And then additionally, they want us to do the average of that. Pipe, AVG. So now it's going to show me my overall average of my 500 counts. Then I'm going to take this lovely code, I'm going to copy it, I'm going to add a new query, I'm going to paste it, and then I want to go back and look at the previous day's worth of material. For that, I am going to use the time shift operator. Notice when I use the time shift operator and I say 1D, there's no minus sign here. It's going to go back 1 day. So again, time shift 1D. There is no negative operator there needed. So there's my today's data. Here's my tomorrow's data or yesterday's data. I can filter and see what I want. And then again, I can also create the difference. Hashtag B minus hashtag A. To see what's happening. And of course, as you all probably know, we have a lovely application for our AWS Elastic Load Balancer. So you could install that if you wanted to. Hang on a second. I have the ALB applications here installed. By the way, when you take the test and it asks you questions about the ALB Elastic Load Balancer and different fields and stuff like that, if you get stumped on that, like what fields does it monitor, what things does it look at, feel free to ask me and I'll share my screen and you can see the different things and get the answers to your questions. We really want things to be easy for you when you take this exam. So I will gladly share with you these applications. I mean, you can install them yourself on the training environment, but if you don't, you probably don't want to install them on your environment if you don't have AWS. And we don't want you to have to install anything, just be honest with you, make it easy. All right. So that's what we're trying to show you, that lovely application that you can use, and you can use that to see your data and your AWS environment. And basically life is good. Now, new topic, new conversations. Let's go back to the slides here for a second, right? We've been playing around here and having ourselves a really good time with regards to some queries. What I want to do now is I want to focus on some metrics and how we deal with metrics, okay? So just bear with me a second while I get kind of caught up here with my documentation. All right, so we support 3 metric formats. Ideally, we want the key value pair format. That's what we like. The key value pair is Carbon 2.0. So again, key value, key value, key value. But we also support Prometheus. And Prometheus has the metric, and then inside the structure of that, and then the values. We also support Graphite, which is a dotted notation. And the point is that you can convert one of these to these other formats into a Carbon 2.0 system if you want to. So we can convert using the metric rules operator editor. We can convert from one data type to another. Basically, what we're trying to do is convert everything to Carbon 2.0. How we do that is, again, under managed data, there's a section here called metrics. And here we have our metric rules. So What you're going to find is we have for our travel logic, and those of you who had the fundamentals or the search mastery class, you know, we've got this fictitious company called Travel Logic where people can book planes, trains, and automobiles or whatever. These happen to be in graphite. So what happens is it starts with the word travel, and then it typically has various other parts and various other fields. Bear with me a second while I select this little rascal again. There we go. So for example, here my node is, my namespace is my first node. My node is my second node. My pod is my third node. My type is my fourth node, and my metric is my fifth node. In other words, if I go out here, bear with me a moment. If I go out here and I type this in, again, this is in graphite, travel.training-counters.travel checkout bookings. If I type this information into my metric, we will be able to see it. We will be able to use it. But ultimately, what I really like to do is convert it to Carbon 2.0. So here I can paste this information in, I can run it, and lo and behold, I do see my data. So we can ingest graphite, but we probably want to convert it. So here in my metrics, manage data metrics, metric rules, I can write a metric rule to format it to Carbon 2.0. In fact, here in this lab, if I take this code, which is my bookings, and my metric equals success count, which is basically the same as this. These two are equivalent. So if I go back here to my metric and I add another metric and I paste this information in and I run this, whoops, hold on a second. Why did I get this other stuff down here? Okay. Hang on a second here. There we go. Let me filter that some more. There we go. The point is, these two are identical. They're just two different ways of looking at the same information. This is in Carbon 2.0. Excuse me. This is in graphite. This is in Carbon 2.0. Okay. And so we have the ability to convert from those different data types in here if we want to. By the way, while we're down here in manage data metrics, I can also convert logs to metrics. So I can ingest logs and build some metrics out of that. So I can click in here, for example, and I can say, I'm going to create, grab some Apache logs, if you don't mind, assuming I can type. And then my scope, I'm going to grab my Apache access logs. And this is the next lab, by the way. This is lab number, bear with me a second, guys. I'm going to come back to this lab in just a minute. Lab 9, we can grab labs, we can grab stuff from metrics here. And here's the parsec expression I want. So now what's happening is I can convert, when I ingest my logs, I can create metrics. Now, when I look at this data, this is non-numeric, this is non-numeric, this is numeric. This is kind of numeric, but it's got decimal points in between, so it's not really numeric. This is numeric, and the rest of these fields are non-numeric. So the only two numeric fields I have are size and status code. Now, the question is, when I do my logs to metrics here, with regards to size and status code, which do I want to be treated as metrics and which do I want to be not treated as metrics? For example, do I want to aggregate all these status code 200s together? Maybe I want to count them, but do I want to sum them? No, I do not. So down here, I decide on the numeric fields which ones I want to be treated as a metric and which ones I don't. So for example, here in size, I do want that to be treated. I want to be able to sum it, to min it, to max it. I want to treat it as a metric. But status code, I do not want it to be treated as a metric. I do not want to sum it, min it, max it, maybe count it, but that's it. So I will mark that as a dimension. When I look at my size, I may look at it by status code. I may want to qualify it by status code. And so status code is really treated as a dimensional type thing rather than a metric, rather than a key performance indicator. By the way, when I do this, I can also see my logs to metrics. I can also see how many data points per minute I have here. Now, one thing that's interesting, a lot of our customers have, they bought Sumo Logic for their logs, and they may use it for their metrics. But typically when you buy Sumo Logic, we give you so many data points per minute, DPMs. And a lot of companies don't run up against their limit for DPMs, don't even come close. So here, when I click on estimate DPMs, I can see how many DPMs this would generate. And I can also see how many I've purchased. So I can see how I'm doing with regards to my DPMs. Am I in my account values or not? So that's what DPMs are. Okay. Tom asked the question, logs to metrics does not alter logs in any way. That's absolutely true, Tom. It does not. That's absolutely true. Yes. Doesn't alter the logs. It's just as we process it, we will automatically create certain metrics for you. And that, by the way, is what, let me discard my changes here. That is what we're trying to do here in lab. In this lab, we're going ahead and creating these logs to metrics. Lab number 9. Now, I apologize. I got a little ahead of myself here. So let me go back here to lab number 8. And here in lab number 8, like I said, we were starting to create this query. We can also, if we want to, and we basically can convert, our successes to count, our fails to count. So here, back in lab number 8, excuse me, this one right here, I believe. Yep. So if I were to delete this, and if I were to add another one, not only can I look at, actually, I'm sorry, hang on a second. I messed that up. I messed that up. There we go. This is the one I wanted to delete. So the point is that here I have my successes count, right? Copy that, I'm going to add this, add a new one. I'm going to paste it in here. And the only thing I'm going to do differently is I'm going to grab, instead of successes count, I'm going to grab failures.count. Fail.count. And so now I can see here my successes and my failures. And I may not see my failures here. I need to open this up a little bit so I can see some failures. There we go. Here's some failures where I didn't have successes before. So the point is that you can see when I'm having successes, I'm having failures. And again, we can add this to a dashboard. We can typically just have ourselves a grand old time. And then additionally here, we can change this to a dual axis, which is what they're trying to show. So if I go out here and I want to make this a dual axis, I can go out here to my display overrides. I'm sorry, excuse me, to my axes, and I can enable my right axis to show. And then I can also specify display overrides. I want to use C as my value here on my axes. So use Y type. There we go, right axis. So now I can start to have these as a dual axis. So here's my values for this, and then for my failures, I can see my values over here on my right axis. So again, these exercises are designed to kind of help you make your visualizations easier for your users to understand. And that's really what we're trying to advocate here, okay? Also, there's a time shift operator you can use to go back a previous day. Again, you don't use negative numbers. You'll see that in the form of a test question. So, and then we can also see like packets received and metric count. And I can see the delta. I can see the change between the difference between one or the other, or I can also see the rate of change if I want to, using these various operators. So that was lab 8, some of the stuff I overlooked. Lab 9, like I said, converting our metrics from logs. Pretty straightforward. And then lab 10, one of my favorites, alerts, dashboards and alerts. Many people think that in our product that dashboards are our alerts, and that's not true. It is. Yes, you can use a dashboard as an alert, put up your network operations center and see what's going on. But here in our managed data, there is a thing called monitoring. And here under monitoring, you can add monitors. First of all, you can create folders to organize your monitors, right? So you can create your different AWS environments, your different environments that you want to put your monitors in. Then we can create a new monitor. In this new monitor, obviously, since we're talking about metrics, we want to do this based on some sort of a metric query. And this can either be in a basic mode or advanced mode, makes no difference. So bear with me a second while I go in here for CPU. I want to look at my CPU system time for my particular computer. So I'm going to go into source category, and I'm going to go ahead and grab my computer here. So hopefully I get one value. Okay, there's my value. It's out here. This is going back 3 days. I'm going to go back something a little less than 3 days. Let's go back 60 minutes. There we go. And so I can create an alert based on this. If my CPU gets too high, too low, that sort of thing. Now, to tell you the honest truth, right? You know, my CPU at most gets up to what, about 5%. So it's really not a problem. But you could obviously set up an alert or an insight if there's an issue with regards to CPU utilization. So here I can specify whether I'm missing data. So if I'm missing data, my CPU is down or whatever, I'm not getting data, notify me or do something to tell me. And I can also, not only when I notify you when it happens, I'll notify you when the problem goes away, which is really kind of nice. Then here under warnings, I can set certain warning levels. So just for fun here, I will set a warning level at, we'll say, you know, in reality, I'd probably make it like 80% or something like that. But in this case, I'll make it maybe 4%. Okay, so there's my warning level to get above 4%. And then I can specify a critical alert, you know, maybe, you know, again, 5% or 6% or whatever you want. So you can, I can, we can go in here and specify some alert criteria. I can even specify some delay here as far as time. So when the system, you know, when it hits that threshold, I can wait a little while before I send out and say it's really truly a problem. Okay. Can you script when a specific condition is hit? I don't know. I think the question is, do we have APIs for this? And I think we do. So I would actually look at the APIs we have for this and see if you can script it. I think you can, but I'm not 100% sure. Got to be honest with you. Now, once this happens, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to notify you via email? Do you want me to notify you via Datadog or other products? Do you want me to notify you via Slack? what sort of things do you want to do? We can create webhooks to talk to other systems like PagerDuty and various other things. How do you want to notify folks that there's stuff going on? In fact, we're also going to add some further additional functionality here, like running scripts and things like that. So if I want to create a new email, who do I want to send this to? What sort of dynamic and static text do I want to use? What message do I want to type in here? By the way, here's the other variables that you can use as far as your dynamic text that you can display. And then, do I want this to be fired off when we're missing data and recover, when we're having warnings and we recover, and we have critical situations and we recover? Do I also want to create another notification for other things, other things? Maybe I want to notify my network operations center. Maybe I want to notify my IT department. Maybe I want to notify, and you can go through here and define who you want to notify. Then you give this thing a name and then you save it. Now, on these various saved monitors, again, if I go down here toward my monitors, I can see what their state is, whether they're normal, whether they're in a critical state, whether they're in a warning state. So you can visually see where things are with regards to these various monitors that you save. One other thing I wanted to mention to you with regards to the monitors that's new. Again, if I go in here to metric and I grab my CPU sys based on my source category of my computer again. Okay. I can also, come on, there you go. I can also, let's go back, not 3 days, let's go back to something a little more reasonable here. Okay. I can also use the outlier function. And so the outlier function would allow me to see this data and get statistical information about, the outlier function. I can look for whether or not I want to, if it gets above a certain level, below a certain level based on outlier mathematics. I can also do that. So that's something we've recently added to the product. So hopefully that gives you an idea of lab number 10. Now, lab number 11 is just nothing more than a cleanup exercise. So in lab number 11, if you don't want to keep sending your data, your host data to Sumo Logic, and I get that, you can delete your collector. So there's two steps to this process. Step number one is you're going to go out to our Sumo Logic environment in, again, manage data under collection. And you're going to go ahead and delete the collector. And if you delete the collector, the source gets deleted as well. Or you can delete your source, whichever you want. But I'm going to assume after this class, you don't want to send your data from your computer into Sumo Logic training environment anymore. So that's one thing you can do. The second thing you can do is you've got to clean up and remove the collector from your software on your computer. Now, if you're running Windows, you're going to go into your control panel. You're going to go to add remove programs. You're going to find the Sumo Logic collector and you're going to uninstall it. If you're on a Mac, it's a little bit more complicated, but not too bad. So on a Mac, you go ahead and fire up your Finder here. Finder, come on, Finder. Let's do it that way. And if you go into your applications here, where all your applications are installed on a Mac, you will find that there is a folder called Sumo Logic Collector. And if you go into Sumo Logic Collector, you'll find that there is an uninstall application. Uninstall it. And you can run that, and that will uninstall the app. And therefore, it will leave you nice and clean. So, folks, I hope that helps you understand metrics and the things that we can do with metrics. What questions do you have before I start getting ready to get you all into the exam and get you a chance to take the certification exam? What questions have you? All right. And let's go ahead and play and get ready to take the exam. First of all, if you're in the training environment, I need you to log out of the training environment. So I need you to log out. The way you're going to do that is you're going to open up the navigation panel if it's not already open. You're going to click on your name down here and you're going to click on sign out. That's going to log you out. And what I need you to do is I need you to log into your company's Sumo Logic environment, into your company's Sumo Logic environment. Why? Because right now you're logged in as training plus admin with some number. We don't want that user to get credit for the exam. We want you to get credit for passing your exam. Okay. So we want to make sure you're logged in somewhere where you're logged in as you. Okay. So you want to log into your company's environment. Does anybody not have a company environment to log into? If you don't, you can sign up for a free tutorial. So yeah, I figured as much. There's always somebody. So I'm going to give you this URL. I'll put it in the chat box where you can sign up for a free demo environment to play with. And you can take your exam from that environment. So I've copied and pasted this link in here. All you've got to do is put your email address in, where you are located geography-wise. If I were you, I would probably not opt into the Sumo Logic Communications, but it's up to you. You certainly want to agree to the SLA. And then it will send you an email with an environment for you to play with. Okay. The rest of you, I'd like you to log into your Sumo Logic environment, your company's Sumo Logic environment. So down here in the corner, it has your first name and last name, right? And then there is an interesting little issue that occurs. For those of you who have not logged into our certification area before, you're going to have a little problem. So, and I'll explain to you the problem, I'll explain to you why and all that fun stuff. Normally to get to our certification area, you click on this little tab right here. Then you click on certification. Then you click on get certified. And when you click on get certified, one of two things is going to happen. It's either going to take you into our LMS or it's going to do this. So again, you click on the house, you click on certification, you click on this, and it takes you back to this. Okay. You might think that's a bug. It's actually a security feature. We cannot move you from one environment in Sumo Logic to another environment in Sumo Logic without your permission. So how do we fix this? Well, the way you fix it, if you're experiencing this problem, so when you click on home, you click on certification, you click on get certified, it's not taking you to our LMS. To fix this, it's real simple. In your Sumo Logic environment, you're going to click on, open up your navigation panel, click on help, click on community. And when you click on community, you should see a pop-up panel. I don't, because I fixed this about 2 years ago. But you'll see a pop-up panel that has a button on it that says something about verify email or allow or something like that. You click on that button. Within a minute, you're going to get an email from Sumo Logic. And in that email, in the body of the email, is going to be another button. So you click on that button, you are now giving yourself and us permission to move you from one environment to another. Okay. Okay. I'll get there in a second, so bear with me. Okay. So that's the problem. And once you do this and you get that email and you click on the button of that email, this problem goes away forever and ever and ever. So now you can go to the home tab here, I'm sorry, certification tab there, get certified. And now it will take you into our learning management system. And as I mentioned earlier today, this is where we keep our passwords. So if you want to know what our passwords are, there you go. Now, you might notice in here, we've got a bunch of self-paced courses. That Metric Mastery, here's the self-paced course if you want. Search Mastery, here's the self-paced course. We've moved all the exams under this tile called Get Certified. So if you click on Get Certified, you will see all the various exams. And if you want, I might want to filter for only English exams. So I'll filter for English exams. And then what I'm looking for here is the Metric Mastery exam. So I'm going to go into the Metric Mastery exam. Now, to take this exam, there's a little button here. You have to register. And the minute you click on it, boom, you're registered. Piece of cake. Now, from here on in, I'm going to click around. I don't want you to follow. So if you've been following along with me, please don't. Okay. I want you, because I'm going to show you some things. I'm going to point out something very, very important. Up here in the upper right-hand corner is your profile. So in that profile, you can see all the exams that you've taken and you've passed. And if you've passed it, you can see your certificate. You can add it to your LinkedIn profile, all that good stuff. If you want to add a picture, you add your picture in here, you can certainly do that. You don't have to. But this is the record of all the exams that you've taken. Okay. Now, The reason I point that out is something very, very important that I need to explain to you. Here in my metric mastery exam, and again, don't follow along with me, just watch. Before you start, here's the information. You got 30 questions. You're going to have 60 minutes to complete it. It's open book, open notes. The questions are going to be fill in the blanks, matching text, multiple choice, et cetera, et cetera. A passing score is 75. When I click next, it's going to take me to the exam. Here is my 1 hour, 16-minute counter. I can either click start the assessment, or I can start to scroll down. Once I start seeing questions, I will start, my timer will start. So it says here from lab 5, what is the correct syntax for the query that aggregates the results of our two queries A and B into a third query? And you may recall, if I want to aggregate them, it's going to basically be this option right here, plus hashtag A plus hashtag B. And then here, question number 2, it says, fill in the blanks. Filters allow you to control the amount of information displayed on your dashboards. Okay. Now I'm only going to answer the first 2. And I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom. And obviously I'm going to fail. I only answered 2 questions. But the point is, it tells you what questions you got right. It tells you what questions you got wrong. And most importantly, here's the big thing. This button, close course. If you take this exam and you pass it, and you're very proud of the fact you passed, and I'm very happy for you. I'm very proud of you too. Don't forget to click this close course button, because when you click this close course button, it writes it to your profile, and therefore you will be able to see your certificate. And you'll be able to add it to your LinkedIn profile and all that stuff. If you don't click this close course button, it didn't happen. The exam did not happen. It does not record it to your profile, which is why I'm trying to show you all this. So please click this close course button when you finish and you pass. If you don't pass, I don't care if you click it or not, quite frankly. But if you do pass, I want to make sure you get credit for it. I want to make sure it gets added to your profile. Okay. Any questions about this? All right. Then on behalf of myself and everyone at MicroStrategy, excuse me, previous company, forgive me. Everybody at Sumo Logic, want to thank you for attending. If there's anything we can do for you guys, please don't hesitate to ask. Otherwise, I'm going to let you guys take the exam. I'm going to turn off the recording. I'm going to stop video sharing and all that fun stuff, and I'm going to let you guys take your exams. Thanks a lot for attending. Look forward to seeing you in future class. Please be safe out there. Again, if you get stuck in a question or something, let me know. Don't hesitate to ask.